Welcome back. Turning to the U.S. military now, another suspected drug boat was struck last night in the Pacific Ocean. It marks the second strike on the Pacific side of Latin America. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth shared video of the fatal strike on social media, and you see it there. He said 3 people were killed. Now, there have been 9 strikes in total so far, and at least 37 people have been killed altogether. Hegseth promised these strikes will continue, quote, day after day. He said the people killed were narco-terrorists who bring death and destruction to U.S. cities. Colombia's foreign ministry released a statement today saying, in part, Colombia calls on the U.S. to stop these attacks and urges it to respect the rules dictated by international law and to adopt comprehensive and effective strategies to continue together with the fight against drugs in the region, as we have been doing for decades. Joining us right now is Professor of Latin American Studies at Pomona College, Miguel Tinker Salas. Miguel, thank you so much for joining us today. So the Trump administration has labeled these boats as drug vessels, but there's still a big question as to whether or not there's any proof of this. And I want to ask you, is there a disregard of international law happening here?
Yeah, this is a dangerous escalation. The U.S. declares itself judge, jury, and executioner. There's no evidence presented. The reality is that this seems to be much more of a regime change operation aimed at Venezuela than it is actually interdicting drugs. Drugs are trafficked throughout the world, but there's no evidence here presented. Venezuela, for its part, does not produce fentanyl. It is not a producer of cocaine. Colombia does produce cocaine, but none of that is really done by the government. It's done by cartels or by individual groups. So the reality is that we're engaged in a conflict that has a mission creep that keeps increasing in scope, yet with no defined task, no defined objective, and it can be very dangerous.
Yeah, and I want to stay on that there because you mentioned the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro. President Trump has said that he is a drug trafficking threat. So where do these allegations actually stem from? And is this based on any facts?
Well, the reality is that the president has a penchant for labeling his enemies either as narco-terrorist or terrorist or any other name without providing any evidence. Somehow there's a belief that because drugs are trafficked, somehow the president himself is involved. Drugs are trafficked literally in every country in the world, including the United States, but we're not labeling those people or those individuals as part of some international conspiracy. So undoubtedly, drugs traverse through Venezuela as they do traverse through Colombia or Mexico or Brazil or any other country or the U.S. But the reality is that there's little evidence to prove that the president of Venezuela is running a cartel. And in fact, the National Intelligence Agency of the U.S. earlier in the spring of this year indicated that Nicolas Maduro does not control the cartel. And in fact, that he is not trafficking in drugs and that he has clashed with drug traffickers and that Venezuela is not a producer of fentanyl and not a producer of cocaine.
And Miguel, how much does Trump's Latin American foreign policy relate to internal politics here in the U.S.?
Well, I think it's very much related to internal politics. Venezuelans have been demonized in the U.S. Trump has tried to attach them to the cartel Tren de Aragua or another cartel. He tried with the Enemies Alien Act to have them deported. That did not work. But now that we have a conflict going with Venezuela, he may try to revisit that issue. But the reality is that much of what's happening in Latin America has a view towards convincing people in the U.S. that Venezuelans somehow deserve to be deported. The TPS should be eliminated. That means temporary protective service. And that somehow, if they could get rid of Maduro, they will all return. And that's a fallacy because it'll take decades to rebuild Venezuela before anyone starts to return in a massive form.
Okay. Miguel Tinker Salas, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate your insight.